Imagine a world where what you see, read, maybe you can say online is heavily scrutinized,
Yeah.
controlled even. And this is happening in a country known for its democratic freedoms. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Australia's evolving digital landscape.
Mhm.
Now, it's getting complicated down there, with the lines between security, safety, and, yes, censorship getting pretty blurry.
Increasingly blurry.
Our mission today is really to sift through a pile of sources analyses from places like the Institute of Public Affairs, Tech Dirt, some academic papers too on internet policy, cyber, data protection, all that stuff. We would pull out the key insights, give you a shortcut basically to understanding this push and pull between online freedom and control in Australia.
Yeah, and it's not just, abstract legal stuff. These are changes that could genuinely reshape how you experience the internet, what you can post, how your data is handled, or maybe not handled securely.
Exactly. So let's jump in. Let's unpack some of the proposed changes, maybe starting with online content. Our sources, particularly the Institute of Public Affairs, they use some strong language. They describe the government's push for new online censorship laws as, and I'm quoting here, the most draconian attack on free speech Australians have ever faced in peacetime. That's a big claim. What exactly are these laws and why such intense criticism?
Well, it's pretty remarkable stuff. There's this proposed misinformation and disinformation bill, and it basically aims to force social media companies, think Facebook, YouTube, X, to adopt codes of conduct for censoring misinformation.
Okay, codes of conduct. That sounds voluntary.
Not quite. They have to be government-approved codes, and if the companies don't comply, we're talking millions of dollars in fines.
Billions. Wow.
Yeah. And here's the kicker, something our sources really hammer home. There are no fines if they wrongly censor something that's actually true.
Wait, really? No penalty for censoring truth?
None mentioned. So the incentive structure is pretty clear, isn't it? It pushes platforms towards censoring first, asking questions later. Just to avoid those massive fines, it could really stifle legitimate discussion.
That term, misinformation, it gets thrown around so much. How are they actually defining it? Our sources flag the definitions as really vague.
Yeah.
Like one example given is targeting misinformation that causes harm to the Australian environment. Critics worry they could be used to shut down debate on, say, government climate policies. Is that the kind of vagueness we're talking about?
That's precisely the issue. The ambiguity is a major problem. The Institute of Public Affairs, for example, they're really concerned about the government suggesting outsourcing censorship to third-party fact-checkers. Their claim is these checkers are often operated by left-wing journalists and academics who target opinions they disagree with. Now, that's their perspective, of course.
Okay, so potential bias in the fact-checking process.
And another really salient point from the sources. Apparently, these rules wouldn't apply to government officials, bureaucrats, academics, journalists.
Even though, let's be honest, those groups aren't immune to spreading falsehoods themselves sometimes.
Right. So you see the implication. It fundamentally shifts control over the modern town square social media, the internet, towards bureaucrats and politicians, away from open debate.
Okay, so that's the broad picture on content control. Let's zoom in a bit. How are these ideas playing out when it comes to kids online? Australia recently doubled down on this plan to ban kids under 16 from social media, and now that includes YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube got added to the list.
Initially, you might think, okay, protecting kids makes sense. But Tech Dirt, one of our sources, they didn't mince words, called it a horrifically stupid idea, disconnected from reality. Why such a strong reaction?
Well, the criticism hits on a few points. Our sources argue there's just very little actual evidence that a flat-out ban like this helps kids. In fact, there's quite a bit suggesting it could be harmful. Isolating kids, stopping them finding online communities, support networks. And the justification for adding YouTube, it was based on a survey where, 37% of minors said they saw harmful content. But critics jump on that immediately. What does harmful even mean in that context? A swear word, political views you don't like, an educational video someone finds controversial.
It lacks context.
Exactly. It's been described as vibes-based policymaking dressed up in statistics. Not exactly rigorous.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. YouTube isn't just cat videos, right? It's a massive educational resource. Khan Academy teaching calculus, Crash Course doing history, Mark Rober's science stuff. Kids are genuinely learning there.
Absolutely. It's a huge learning platform.
So connecting this back, the wider concern our sources raise is that building the tech, the system, to block kids from YouTube, well, that also builds a massive censorship infrastructure, one that could, down the line, be repurposed for purposes far beyond protecting children. That sounds ominous.
It does, and there's a crucial nuance here, too, from the sources. The ban for YouTube is specifically about making an account, not watching videos entirely.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
they could still watch.
They can still watch, but think about it. It actually removes the tools parents have now, like supervised accounts, to guide what their kids see. Instead, kids are just left to YouTube's algorithm, right? With no real parental controls possible through the account system.
That seems counterproductive.
It does. Plus, you have the whole issue of age verification tech. Our sources basically call it a privacy and security nightmare. And let's face it, kids are smart. They'll find ways around it, which then just undermines respect for the law itself.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Beyond the content you see, there's this deeper layer. What governments can get access to behind the scenes. Let's talk about Australia's encryption laws. The official name is the Telecommunications and Other Legislation Amendment, Assistance and Access Act 2018. TOLA.
TOLA, yeah. Passed very quickly.
Incredibly quickly, seems like.
Yeah.
Little consultation, lots of criticism at the time. What was the government's rationale for pushing it through so fast?
The main justification was tackling the going dark problem. That's the issue where law enforcement intelligence agencies, they can't read messages because of end-to-end encryption. They pointed to real events like the 2015 Paris terror attacks, claiming encryption was hindering investigations. They said something like 90% of their priority cases were impacted.
90%. Okay, so the goal is helping agencies get access to encrypted messages. But the law talks about compelling technical assistance. That sounds broad. What does it actually cover? And who has to provide it?
Yeah, technical assistance is deliberately broad. And who can be compelled? The term is designated communications providers, or DCPs. And that definition is incredibly wide. It's not just Facebook and Apple. It could be small software developers, hardware suppliers, potentially even banks, universities, maybe online retailers, anyone offering services to Aussies.
Wow, okay. So what kind of assistance can they demand?
Again, super broad. Things like removing electronic protection, installing specific software, modifying a service. And critically, they can even compel the provider to conceal the fact that they've done anything at all under the scheme.
Conceal it. So, secrecy is built in, which leads to the big question. Does this force companies to build backdoors, to create systemic weaknesses that could put everyone's security at risk? The law says they can't be forced to build a systemic weakness, but the definition seems fuzzy. Experts doubt you could even do targeted decryption without creating wider risks. How did the sources square that circle?
They don't really. While the law tries to carve out an exception for things affecting a whole class of technology, that definition of systemic weakness is vague. And tech experts consistently argue it's basically impossible. You can't create a special key just for the good guys without risking the bad guys finding it too. It weakens security for everyone.
Right.
And here's maybe the most critical and frankly quite surprising finding from our sources regarding TOLA, despite all the urgent talk about terrorism being the reason for the law.
Yeah. As of the time of our sources, those powers have never actually been used for a terrorism offense.
Never. Seriously. After all that justification.
Never for terrorism. Instead, they've been used for cybercrime investigations, homicide, organized crime, even theft.
So the powers drifted way beyond the original justification.
Exactly. It fits a pattern our sources describe. These highly politicized responses to security threats lead to these really broad powers, and then those powers get used for much more routine policing, often with less oversight, and it poses real risks like potentially compromising journalists' confidential sources. Okay, shifting from government access to how our data is handled more broadly and the responsibilities businesses have. Australia is making some big changes to its data privacy rules. And look, as businesses try to navigate all these new cybersecurity requirements and privacy reforms, finding the right partners and tools becomes absolutely crucial. In fact, if you're grappling with managing cyber risk or ensuring compliance, you might find some really valuable resources over at www.czonemarketplace.com. Which actually leads us nicely into the next point. What are the key privacy changes coming, especially those kicking in around 2025? How will they affect everyday digital citizens, and what new burdens fall on businesses?
Yeah, there's quite a bit happening. A lot of the reforms from the 2024 Amendment Act to the Privacy Act start in 2025. A big one is a new statutory tort for serious invasions of privacy. Essentially, it creates a legal right for individuals to sue if their privacy is breached in a major way.
Okay, so a new way for people to seek damages.
Exactly. There's also a framework being developed for a children's online privacy code that involves consulting with kids, parents, industry, the whole lot. And they're bringing in a specific criminal offense for doxing, maliciously publishing someone's private info online.
Right. And the regulator, the OAIC.
Yeah, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. They've been pretty active, warning businesses about collecting too much data unnecessarily. They're really emphasizing that data collection must be reasonably necessary for the business function and done through lawful and fair means.
So, less data hoarding, more justification needed. Beyond general privacy, you mentioned cybersecurity. There are new rules specifically about ransomware incidents, right, starting May 2025.
That's right. Under the Cybersecurity Act 2024, certain businesses, specifically reporting business entities with over $3 million annual turnover, have a new obligation. If they make a ransomware payment or even just become aware they have made one, they now have to report it to the Australian Signal Directorate.
And quickly, I assume.
Within 72 hours. And it's not just ticking a box. They need to provide detailed info about the attack, the ransom demand, the payment itself, any communication with the attackers. The idea is to give the government a much clearer picture of the ransomware threat landscape in Australia. The Act also lays groundwork for mandatory security standards for smart devices, too.
Okay, ransomware reporting. And sticking with accountability, especially when companies use third-party services.
Yeah.
There was a recent landmark case, wasn't there? The OAIC's first determination under the Consumer Data Right, the CDR.
Yes, that was significant. In May 2025, the OAIC ruled on a case involving Regional Australia Bank, or RA. They found RA liable for a privacy breach, but the breach was actually caused by a fault in software from their third-party provider, a company called BISA.
So the bank itself didn't directly cause the fault, but they were still held liable.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway. The determination made it crystal clear. Under Australia's privacy principles, businesses are liable for the actions or failures of their third-party providers, even if they didn't know about the specific failing.
Wow. That really raises the stakes for businesses choosing and managing their vendors, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It underscores the massive importance of proper due diligence, robust contracts, ongoing monitoring of your suppliers. You really need partners you can trust, especially when sensitive data is involved. Makes finding reliable solutions, maybe like those listed on places like CISO Marketplace, even more critical.
Definitely a big one for businesses.
Yeah.
Okay, let's circle back finally to a piece of legislation that's been around a bit longer, often quite controversial, metadata retention regime. Remind us, what does this law actually require ISPs to do, and what are the concerns that still linger?
Sure. This is the Telecommunications Interception and Access Amendment Data Retention Act from 2015. It mandates that telcos, internet service providers, have to collect and store specific types of customer metadata for 2 years.
Ed data, not content, right?
Right, correct. It specifically excludes the content of calls or messages, and generally it excludes web browsing history too, unless maybe the ISP itself is providing that specific web service. What it does cover is things like who you are as a subscriber, your billing info, the source and destination of your communications, the time, the duration, the type of communication like voice call or SMS, and your device's location and the start and end of mobile calls.
Okay, so quite a bit of data, even if it's not the content. What's the main ongoing criticism?
The biggest concern, which hasn't really gone away despite the justifications about national security and fighting serious crime, is the lack of judicial oversight. Many different government agencies can access this stored metadata without needing a warrant from a judge.
No warrant needed for access.
For many agencies and many purposes, no. And it's not just restricted to terrorism or the most serious crimes. Sources show hundreds of thousands of authorizations are issued each year, often for general criminal law enforcement. So it creates this huge trove of sensitive information about people's communications habits, accessible with a relatively low threshold. That's the core worry that persists.
So putting it all together, we really covered a lot of ground here. Australia's digital landscape is definitely in flux. We've looked at laws around content control, potential censorship, these, let's say, paradoxical approaches to youth online safety. Then there's the encryption debate, TOLA, the sweeping data retention powers, and growing business liabilities for data breaches. A clear pattern seems to emerge, doesn't it? This constant tension. National security versus public safety versus our individual digital rights and freedoms.
It's a balancing act, or perhaps a tug of war. And these aren't just abstract legal points floating around Canberra. They genuinely affect what you, as a listener, can access online, what you feel comfortable saying, and ultimately how your personal information is gathered, used, and hopefully protected. Understanding these shifts is pretty vital, I think.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. As governments all over the world, not just Australia, wrestle with controlling the digital realm, How do we, as informed citizens, make sure that this understandable pursuit of safety and security doesn't accidentally end up eroding the very freedoms, the innovation, the open connection that make the internet such a powerful force in the first place?
That's the critical question, isn't it? Requires ongoing attention, ongoing debate.
Definitely something to keep thinking about.